Sounds really pissed off there.
It's showtime, folks.
Hello, everybody out there. Welcome to Into the Music. I am Andy, that's John, and we are going to proceed with our regularly scheduled program of offering songs and reacting to them and then discussing them with one another. So I believe I am up to bat with the offering. John, are you ready, sir?
Yep.
Excellent. So we've done music by this guy before, and I promised you that I would throw music from another one of his projects at you. I believe this will be the second time this band has appeared on the channel because Greg and Chris did a reaction to them and their track, The Humbling River. This is Maynard James Keenan band, Puscifer. And the song by them is called The Remedy that I'm going to have you listen to today. You up for it?
Most certainly.
Awesome. Well, with all the formalities out of the way and the information you need at hand, why don't you go give it a listen and come back and let me know what you think, sir?
Can do, will do.
Awesome. See you in a bit.
Okay, this is a different sound once again to the other previous incarnations of Maynard James Keenan that I've heard from Andy. In my head, I'm probably wrong, this almost sounds like a Faith No More song, but sort of lighter. Our home, our rules, respect them all. I mean, how many bloody times have I heard that? Oh, there.
Respect them more. Bitches, Reese's stitches, trolls receive 86 cents. Stick around if your house broken. Can't hold your shit or your tongue, you gotta go. Should you choose to react like an imbecile, you in turn will be treated so. Yes, we're being condescending. Yes, that means we're talking down to you with all that.
Sorry, I just love that line. Yes, we're being condescending. Yes, that means we're talking down to you. That's hilarious.
Yes, that means we're talking down to you with all that racket from your lips are flapping. We assumed you didn't notice. Haters, isolators. bitches, racing stitches. Trolls receive 86s. Yes, we're being condescending. Yes, that means we're talking down to you. With all that racket from your lips are flapping, we assumed you didn't notice. Haters, isolators, no one misses, please. Bitches, receive stitches. Trolls receive 86s. You speak like someone who has never been smacked in the fucking mouth. That's okay, we have the remedy. You speak like someone who has never been knocked the fuck out. But we have your remedy.
It sounds really pissed off there. The early parts of the song have got aggression and violence in them, but it's really controlled, measured. The music's quite low key, actually. There was a little break back there that had some guitars in that almost sounded like sort of mid-period U2, the way they were sort of shimmering over them. But this bit here, his voice is different, and he's clearly offering up his help. Someone's pissed him off. Snowflakes? I don't know. Yeah, really interesting. Really interesting.
That's okay, we have the remedy. You speak like someone who has never been knocked the fuck out. But we have your remedy.
6 minutes. Wow, that flew by. Felt like about 3. Very, very interesting and intriguing. Back to Andy.
And you're back. So you've listened to Maynard and you've listened to a couple tracks from A Perfect Circle, another one of his big projects. What do you think about Puscifer and this project that Maynard's involved in?
Yeah, so far we're 2 for 2 with Maynard James Keenan. I almost remembered his name. Yeah, this is 3 for 3. I would say of the 3 songs, it's the it's third, but
Okay.
but the other 2 are really, really good. So it's no reflection on quality. Different sounds, really different sounds. When it first started, and I'm not an aficionado of this band by any means, but it almost sounded a bit sort of Faith No More, light. It was it was like, oh, I'm not expecting this at all. And then they kicked off, and of course another thing which I don't remember, correct me if I'm wrong with the other 2 songs, pretty sure, female voices, which is new and shiny. So musically it's really contained and controlled. There was no fireworks really to speak of at all. And with the subject matter, it kind of made it even more threatening, which I enjoyed. I found that so they sang together. I mean, there's at least 1, if not 2 female voices. I know I've done that show, but but there was at least, I think there was 2 female voices, but they sang together for the first verse, and it struck me how well the voices all went together really, really nicely. They fitted, and then it kind of split off for a bit, and then it joined towards the end, and they were doing background stuff as well. I picked up some lyrics because they were very interesting and thought-provoking, and my sort of thoughts changed quite a bit during the song, actually. Well, particularly at one point. So there was the opening line, how our home, our rules, respect them all, bitches receive stitches, trolls receive 86s.
Yes.
I'm presuming 86s,
Yeah, it's funny because I came to know the term 86 from working in the restaurant industry, like as a bartender when I was younger, like in my college days, and 86 means we're out of this. So
yeah,
back of the house says 86 ribeye. You means, oh, we sold out of ribeye tonight, or 86 Stoli vodka and cran because we're out of that, or whatever. So yeah, just means out of here.
Oh, just kicked out, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
we're
our home, our rules, respect them or else. It's a very familiar refrain that I've heard many times as well. But it's a bit harsh, bitches receive stitches. I mean, Jesus,
Especially, it's funny because of the melodic way it's delivered.
Yeah.
Like it's so tranquil sort of sounding or beautiful, but then there's this like
well, there's this there's this scary thought that people who talk about or offer up violence but do so in a very controlled and calm way are a lot more scary than your shouty screamy guys.
Yes.
And interesting, this is completely to one side, but I remember years ago I was studying the Celts, and what they used to do was strip naked, dress themselves in various paints. They would use lime mixed in with water to spike their hair up as well. And then when it came to battle, they would just walk forward really slowly, and it scared the shit out of everybody else. Anyway. But yeah, this
it's the same
not quite the
right?
same. Yeah, exactly. And then some other really, and then I think after that the voices split, so they sang for a bit, the females, because there was one really, it's hard to pick up, but there was a really high sort of mirrored voice over the main female voice, and there's this wonderful line, yes, we're being condescending, yes, that means we're talking down to you, which I thought was really funny. And it's the kind of thing people would say as well, if some bullying type mentality. I sort of I caught the lyrics, but I didn't remember them. So there's a few more. And then it broke down for a bit. And and I'm presuming it's been there all along, but this really nice bass you suddenly notice for the first time. I mean, really nice. And then it continues. And then there's another verse or so. And then it breaks down again. And then there are these shimmering, I would call them mid-era U2 guitars almost. And again, I don't know if and then you heard them slightly lower in the mix later on as well. Because they're really subtle and really nice, but it really sort of reminded me of that sort of Unforgettable Fire sort of era U2, which was lovely. Really like that. And then he loses his rag. So at this point, I'm thinking it's about violence, per se, and how, people control people with violence. And, my experience, it brought up a lot. My experience of schooling discipline was based on violence and fear. And I got a number of beatings. And my personal experience of that is the violence begets violence. So the only thing I took away from it was how the fuck am I going to get my own back? And I once threatened a teacher that I would end him if he ever touched me again. And then I was shot up to the height of 6'2", and no one touched me after that, which is amazing. But it just brought all that back, and it was really interesting. And it was often this form of control was not based on respect, although they thought it, commanded it, but it didn't. I mean, one of the things we had to do, would you believe it, was after someone had beaten you, you had to turn around and say, "Thank you, sir."
Oh my God.
And it's just this control and break you down, and you really wanted to stab them in the neck with a fork.
It's hard to believe with a mentality like that it was born of a colonial state. Like it's like that.
Who would have guessed, eh?
Yeah, who would have thought? But
it was often, I thought, a sign of intellectual shortcoming on the part of the perpetrator. They didn't have the wherewithal to deal with things, so instead they would just beat the children, which is just fucking terrible. You wouldn't be a dog, let alone a child, just supposed to be shaping for the future. But anyway, then, as I say, then he loses his fucking temper. and you hear the aggression in his voice, and it's really cool, actually.
Yeah.
And then he says,
speak like
someone who has never been smacked in the fucking mouth. That's okay. We have the remedy. Now, if someone said that to you in a bar, you think, oh, it's hammer time. I'm in trouble now.
I would also retrospectively think, damn, that's a good line for you to use
exactly.
before she kicks off. You know what I mean?
And then he says it again with something like, "You've never been knocked the fuck out" or something.
Yeah.
But it's really. And then my thoughts changed, because he sounded so pissed off that it's not about him talking out against violence. But it's clearly then, I think, he must have experienced it. But it's almost like his attack on snowflakes or something like that. It's just that he really had enough of some whiny person in front of him. And it just, it's almost like welcome to the real world smack. And it was an interesting, again, another side, but we were talking about this. Growing up where I was, I mean, the center of the universe was the pub. And that's where your cultural hub was every night from the age of 14. And of course, sneaking at 14, I was the tallest, so I'd always get the drinks from the bar. But you learned sitting at the back of the pub to keep your shit together and not go crazy, because there were much bigger and older people that would smack you in the fucking mouth and knock you out if you misbehaved. So you learned all that stuff, sometimes the hard way, but you did. And it was quite, I wouldn't recommend it, but I mean, it was effective.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking, is this kind of, a bit of people who sort of, this bitches and all this stuff you mentioned before, is they got this whiny thing, which made me think snowflake, and they're just not connected with the real world. And, you can do all this, but at the end of the day, you can piss people off so far, and then they'll just turn around and smack you one in the face, and then where are you?
Yeah.
Well, picking up your teeth. Or was
Yeah.
that great line in the Blues Brothers where he says, "Son, you're gonna look pretty fucking funny trying to eat corn on the cob with no fucking teeth." I mean, I
Yep.
love that line, and it's really again, it's
Or
that
the
thing.
or the Mike Tyson line where everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. You know what I mean?
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly, yeah.
another one
But
that
that's what it kind of, and then obviously they repeat it through, and it becomes a bit more dynamic, the music then, and there's the sort of backing vocals, and it kind of breaks down a little bit and then builds back up again. But yeah, overall, I have to admit at the start I wasn't 100% convinced because it was so low key. But it soon turned my sort of opinions around sort of halfway through the song. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And I've said this before, he's a clever bastard, isn't he?
very
MJK.
Yeah, that's
It's easier to say.
his name on the street. Everyone
Is
calls
it? It's just easier to say, you know.
Whenever anyone's talking about it, they're like, "Oh, MJK is the." It's like, okay, you're totally standing Maynard right now. But, and he deserves it, but I kind of sit back and laugh when I go into like the comments field or anything affiliated with any of his projects, because there are these people that come out of the woodwork that just are so like effusive. It's like, calm down. You're
Yes,
frothing.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah. So, but that's the kind of people he inspires. That's the kind of art he makes that people get so invested in it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Radiohead fans do the same thing when they want to talk about how Radiohead like invented the wheel and they're like gods and all this stuff. Like, I love Radiohead, but like, some people are a bit over the top with it. But The Remedy is a song about survival values and fellowship in harsh circumstances. It is written from the perspective of someone ready to help those who lack perspective to adapt to cruel realities, but unwilling to coddle anyone who refuses to accept that they need help. I heard this song.
That's a funny way of putting it.
Yeah. It is a very clever way of saying exactly what you said with all this doctored up, churched up language. This song came out at a perfect time, like around 2015, when everything around online movements and opinion having and sharing those opinions or reacting to those opinions in a very disassociated fashion, where there's no way you would espouse your anger or frustrations in that manner if it wasn't online. There's no way you would react to someone espousing angers or frustrations that way if it wasn't online. You're speaking to one another like the advent of catching an ass whooping never existed, because you're doing it virtually and you're a keyboard warrior. And that makes you a real POS, in my opinion, because the way you conduct yourself online is the same way a young John should have conducted himself in a pub. Like, you have to be respectful of people. We live in a society here. Decency is still the common denominator for communication, in my opinion. This song, I think, perfectly captures, and you can come at it from whatever angle you want to. You can be the person who's offended. You can be the person who's offended by the offense. All this stuff still applies to you. This mantra, this idea that you're walking around like an ass kick and couldn't just fall out of the sky is, I think, needed to, at that time, it was really coming to a head with all this stuff, and it continues to this day. And I talked about going to comment sections on posts online, and you see that stuff, and it's so gross and it's so vile, and it's not indicative of true human nature. Or perhaps it is without divorce from the advent of face-to-face interaction, but whatever it is, it's gross, and I think it needs to be addressed. And this song made me laugh and vehemently agree with the sentiment that was being espoused. And I'm not even one that's pro-violence, but I do understand that there are ramifications for one's words and actions and how they portray them. And one of those things could be getting punched in the fucking mouth. So yeah, I just loved the sort of the subject matter and how Maynard approached it in this song. I also love the ridiculous fuzzed out overdrive bass line that drives this whole song. And it was your first listen, and I get it. The first time I heard the song, the first thing that stood out to me was that the bass line, that sort of rumbling, overdriven bass line throughout the whole thing, and I just loved it so much. But you're right, there's a lot of atmospheric stuff that I caught later that you interestingly caught in your first listen. that I sort of would always go back to this and be like, oh yeah, here's this other thing I didn't catch. Or you're right, there, whether it's two different women or it's the one woman's voice recorded on two different tracks layered on top of one another, that's gorgeous. That's beautiful. And even the way Maynard's voice plays with her voice when they're harmonizing together is really lovely. And it's kind of this I don't know, it's a different sound from stuff Maynard's done before. You get hard rock vibes in a lot of what A Perfect Circle does. You get proggy, like metal adjacent stuff in Tool. This is almost like indie rock, trip hop, post-industrial stuff that you're getting. It's like a whole nother subgenre of rock and roll music. And yet he still somehow finds a way to perfectly dovetail his voice into the sound, though you've heard it and are accustomed to it in other fashions. So I'm just a big mark for this tune, and a lot of this band's stuff. This song is off the album Money Shot, which again I said came out in 2015. So yeah, that's some of the information behind the band, behind the song, and I'm glad that it grew on you the more you listened to it and progressed through the song. It's a bit of a longer one. But I'm glad you had the patience to give it time and let it all kind of wash over you.
Actually, when I did the reaction, the ending surprised me because it flew by. It didn't feel like 6 minutes; it felt like 3.
Yeah,
Honestly, and that's probably. I think I stopped it a few times as well, so it probably didn't help. But apologies. But yeah, just to circle back on a couple of things you said very briefly. I'll try not to get on my soapbox, but this issue with. And there's a couple of bits to it. One is everybody thinks their opinion is important, and it really isn't. And we had this thing during Brexit when one of our politicians said, "I think we've had enough of hearing from experts." No, we haven't, and the pandemic just bloody proved that.
Yeah.
But it started many years ago when the internet started, and also the prevalence of mobile phones, that so many shows on television, especially consumer ones or daytime ones or whatever, they would constantly say, well, we'd love to hear from you, send in your emails, text in or whatever, and they feature stuff on the show almost live, as it were, about what Elsie in Blackpool thinks about this. I don't care what Elsie in Blackpool thinks about this unless she's got a qualified opinion. It's what I was trying to say to my nephew. He has opinions on everything. I don't know who told you that it's important to have an opinion on everything. It really isn't. It's important to have an informed opinion on everything. And if your opinion isn't informed, you can throw it in the dustbin until you actually get that information to form that opinion.
Yeah.
And so there's all that, and you're right, and it's just grown from there. And again, going on from what you said, the other thing that used to happen is people kept their thoughts to themselves. If you think, sitting on a bus, that guy is such an ugly bastard, you wouldn't say it out loud. But if you see it online, they pop it in the comments.
Yeah.
And that is a scenario where, bingo, he would turn around and rearrange it down.
Yeah, because while he might be ugly, he might have the world's meanest left hook. So what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, why are you?
Ugly is as ugly does, as they say. What is beautiful to some people, again, it's all.
Yeah,
and I don't really care what you think about this or that, unless you are someone who, as person's opinion, I value, for which we built up over a period of time, or you are a proven expert in whatever thing we're discussing. If you're a random guy from over the whatever, and you happen to say, well, I think this about this, and it's just because they think it, or they're looking to troll or whatever. I mean, we're a poor old world for that. We really are.
Yeah, you're absolutely.
But the genie's out of the bottle. We can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And of course, you do realize now we're going to ask all the people who watch this for their comments.
Yeah, absolutely, and feel free to provide them. But
they are usually informed, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're oftentimes very decent in how they provide it. They're not being so strident on a topic that is so subjective. Like, those two things don't. How can you be strident about something that is based on subjectivity? Those two things should never mesh or overlap. Or if you do have a strident opinion and you know it's about something subjective, just shut the fuck up. Like, like no one cares. No one cares. Unless they ask you, like, just, you know, and this is fun. I'm glad that we could sort of, you know, be a couple middle-aged dudes screaming, "Get off my lawn," to this new paradigm in how humans communicate with one another is when there's no physical or face-to-face ramifications.
It's just a sewer out there on Twitter. I mean, it really, you know, it saddens me. That's the thing. But but there are clearly daily examples of decency and or whatever. So you know, you've got to remember that, and not just remember the shite. You know?
Yeah.
But it's hard to ignore when there's so much of it building up around.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It being hard to ignore. Because at one point I used to, as glutton for punishment, I'd be like, look at how these people, and I'm just like, Branch, get out of this. Like, no, you don't want to see this. You don't want to be reminded that this is how people actually behave. But it's sometimes unavoidable, and it's leaking into those face-to-face interactions, because people have lived this lifestyle for so long that we've seen it happen in politics. We've seen it happen where people with diverging views communicate with each other, even in the face-to-face. So
we've seen it happen at the Oscars.
Yeah, we've seen it happen on the steps of the fucking Capitol, John. This is where, that kind of, when you live in a world where that stuff is like fomented, and then you step out in the real world and you forget that you're stepping out from one world into another and they bleed together, you're going to get thrown in jail for doing dumb shit. You're going to get boycotted from doing movies. That's going to be your last Oscars, Will Smith. All this stuff, like it's a poison. It really is a societal poison. And this song, I think, captures it really well. And oh my God, people are like, these guys are going off right now. But it is what it is.
And another thing.
Yeah, right.
I want to be Greg for a bit.
It's like Festivus with the airing of the grievances, where we're all just like, and another thing. Oh my. Well, John, thank you so much for giving this one a listen, buddy. I appreciate you. And honestly, this conversation is like, it's comforting to know that someone else feels that there are still other people that feel the same way as I do, or Maynard feels about these kind of things.
Thanks everybody to listen to our ramblings and ragings against the wind, against the machine.
Yes, our wobbly shields held futilely against the onslaught.
Damn this electricity! I never trusted it. If you did like this song, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Be good to yourself and each other, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of Into the Music.
See ya.